Assalamu alaikum. My name is Robert McCaw. I'm the National Government Affairs Director with the Council on American Islamic Relations, and this is CAIR on the Air. And today's program is the No Ban Act, what you need to know. Today's show, we're going to discuss the components and the implications of the No Ban Act, which just passed last night in Congress, which will repeal the Muslim ban and its racist and anti-immigrant visa bans if we can get it through the Senate. So, with that, I want to first bring on our guest, CAIR Senior Litigation Attorney, Gadir Abbas.
Assalamu alaikum, Robert. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. How are you, brother?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, most definitely. How are you holding up over there? Where is over there?
I'm in Chicago, in Bronzeville on the south side. It's, in the 80s, it's sunny. So we got another 2-3 weeks of good weather before it starts snowing again. So we're gonna soak it all up.
All right, that's 2020 for you. We had a heat wave in DC, and then we had an amazing storm last night. So now it's nice and muggy, the way DC always is.
Of course.
So we had some epic news yesterday. The No Ban Act, which is really the first Muslim civil rights bill, if you think about it, passed in the U.S. House of Congress. Were you able to see Representative Rashida presiding over the floor? Wasn't that cool?
It was amazing to see a Muslim sister preside over the House of Representatives to get passed a bill aimed at boosting the status of Muslims in the United States. Absolutely.
I thought it was it's like the first flex of Muslims' political power, with a lot of allies, a lot of members of Congress standing with the Muslim community, and it's time for us to head back to the gym. But I was excited to see this all happen. So just, for everyone watching that doesn't know what the No Ban Act, it was a bill that was introduced into Congress last year, in the House by Representative Judy Chu, in the Senate by Chris Coons. And this is a repeal bill. So it would repeal the No Ban Act. I mean, not the No Ban. It would repeal the Muslim ban, which is now transformed into this Muslim and African ban, which limits visas. And this bill, when you look at it, it repeals each iteration of the Muslim ban, the African ban, including the orders that specifically targeted refugees for extreme vetting, as well as Trump's asylum ban, that was issued after the Supreme Court's ruling, that relies on the same authority of the Muslim ban. And that authority is in the Immigration and Nationality Act. And this act amends it, the No Ban Act, to include non-discrimination provisions that explicitly prohibits discrimination based on religion, and applies all these non-discrimination protections to immigrant and non-immigrant visa applications alike. And it also responsibly limits the overbroad executive authority that exists that would allow a president like Trump to just ban large swaths of people from nations with very little reasoning. So we were really excited to see that this ban, repeal on the Muslim ban, had gained steam since it was introduced in April of last year. And, in addition to those no ban provisions, it actually has some other cool components to it. So one part, it introduced an amendment by Representative Jayapal. I'm trying to pull it up. It's really cool. Hold on. It incorporates Representative Jayapal's Access to Counsel Act. And that act guarantees that if you are going through CBP, border stops, or if you're being detained by ICE for more than an hour in any type of secondary screening, that you have a right to legal counsel, but it would provide you that right to have legal counsel there. That also applies to non-citizens, unaccompanied children who'd be detained at the border for long periods of time. So if you end up at the border and you're being detained and you can keep your mouth shut for an hour, if this bill ever passed, you could then just ring up your attorney and they could be on their way. Maybe you could even ring them up if you know it's going to take an hour. So we were really excited that this had passed. And again, it's a historic moment for the Muslim community. Gadir, could you kind of go a little bit into what the Muslim African ban is, and why it's important that we really work to repeal it?
Yeah, well, the Muslim ban was issued just a few days after the Trump became president of the United States. I think it was January 27th. I recall it as a Friday. That's what my memory is. And when it was first enacted, the Muslim ban was aimed not only at people overseas that wanted to apply for visas, but it was included even green card holders. So there was this despicable situation where green card holders, people that have been in the United States for years and years and years, have family in the United States, have long careers in the United States, who perhaps thought that the Trump administration would not be a worst case scenario or had some exigent need to be overseas, were caught in the air or overseas when the executive order came down. And when they landed in the United States, were unable to enter. And so there was a flurry of lawsuits Saturday and Sunday. CAIR filed a major lawsuit, Sarsour v. Trump. Now Congresswoman, then candidate for office, Rashida Tlaib, was a plaintiff in that action. Because not just the Muslim ban obviously affects immigrants. It affects folks that have family overseas, but it affects all Muslims because in the final analysis, the Muslim ban is a monument to the anti-Muslim bigotry that helped sweep Donald Trump into the White House. And after this first wave of litigation was successful in stopping that first Muslim ban, you had another Muslim ban, take two, just a few months later in March, and that found the same fate. It was enjoined, and there was a third effort. We filed suit, against each effort. We had a lawsuit in Virginia that was Sarsour v. Trump. We filed an additional lawsuit in Maryland, Zakzouk v. Trump, and in Maryland against that third iteration of the Muslim ban that unfortunately benefited from some good lawyering, good but hateful lawyering. Although we were successful in getting it enjoined to begin with, the Supreme Court dissolved that injunction, which leaves us where we are now, where the Muslim ban effectively separates families, denies the United States the benefit from immigrants who, enrich our society as well as our economy, and for what? For nothing.
For bigotry.
For bigotry. To appease folks that are feel that they benefit when others are marginalized or excluded. So it's of the utmost importance. I'm of Iraqi descent. I have family in Iran. My cousins, in Iran, still, wouldn't be able to come visit, my young kids, and that is the case for tens of thousands of Muslim families across the country. And so it really is, it's an accomplishment of the Muslim community that although the Muslim ban still exists, and that is a disappointment, that's a shortcoming, that this bill advanced, that the Democratic nominee is promising to repeal the Muslim ban on day one if elected. And all of those things are a testament to the great work that the Muslim community has led, the support of allies that it's enlisted, in its push against the Muslim ban.
Thank you. Thank you for that really big summary, which really just captures all the different elements of why this Muslim ban is horrible. I did get a question, and that was asking which countries the Muslim ban applies to. And I know the first iteration of the Muslim ban applied to Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Syria, Yemen. And in the second iteration, Iraq was removed. And we saw the addition of what we call the window dressing, which was Venezuela and North Korea. Of course, the Venezuela and North Korea bans were more for their political officials, if anything. And then the third wave of the Muslim ban included Eritrea, Nigeria, Sudan, 3 more African countries to the Libya and Somalia. So a total of 5 African countries on the Muslim ban. And then there's Kyrgyzstan, which is a Central Asian country. And then Burma, which is once again window dressing because almost no one comes to America from Burma, and it's really focused on political officials. And so this ban really goes after either countries that have a large portion of Muslims, are Muslim majority, or are African, or are in the Middle East. And so that's a really good question. I just want to jump into, some people were excited and they're asking immediately, so when does this pass the Senate? How do we get this signed into law? And, those are really enthusiastic questions, which, come into the crushing reality that Senator Mitch McConnell, leader of the U.S. Senate, he doesn't want to bring this bill to the floor. This is not going to really proceed in a Republican-held Senate committee. In CAIR's statement welcoming the House's advancement of the No Ban Act, I put a challenge out there to Senate Republican leadership saying, have a moral backbone. Stand up to the discriminatory executive orders that are coming out of this administration. Separate yourself from what is going to be looked not fondly in history at, and challenge the ban. Now, there are a lot of different projections of what the outcome of this election is, and CAIR is a nonpartisan organization. So whoever's in Congress, I'm happy you're there and I'm going to work with you. But, if Democrats took control of Congress, that is more likely the scenario in which a bill that has already passed the House would then be quickly advanced through the Senate. And then if Trump was still president, you would need a supermajority of Congress. So currently, I think, I'm going to pull up my notes here, there were 233 members of the House that voted in support of the bill. Those were actually 231 of them were Democrat, only 2 were Republican. So you need a supermajority to override Trump. You would need like over 350 members of Congress. You'd need like 2/3 of the Senate to just, like over 60 to, take a presidential veto of a bill that's sent and passed and just override him and just put that into law anyways. Like, tough luck. If, as you just mentioned earlier, former Vice President Biden, who pledged just recently publicly that he would repeal the Muslim ban on day one, if that happens, we don't actually need a law from Congress, because you have to remember, the Muslim ban is not a law. This is an executive order. This is a proclamation. This is not law. This is the whims of a really racist president. And so just asking you, dear, what would maybe a presidential repeal look like?
Well, it'd be the easiest thing in the world. Any time some legal enactment is accomplished via an executive order, its durability is very flimsy, because a new president could come in and just rescind it and end the executive order in its entirety. And so you've seen this kind of pattern of executive order undoing, redoing for many years now, because it's something that any president can do. Can walk in, take a look at all the executive orders that have been issued prior to that president-elect's arrival at the White House, and just with a stroke of a pen, unwind the executive order in its entirety. Here, though, we gotta what can't be undone by executive order is the precedent that it sets. The fact that this happened um, uh, orients our immigration system in a particular anti-Muslim direction. And it's not as if, absent this executive order, that the Muslim community is proceeding through or benefiting from the neutrally administered immigration system. Even prior to this executive order, you could count on, if you're Muslim, your visa application is likely to take longer. Your immigration application might be sent to the black hole known as administrative process to languish for years. And so, it is a critical and important step to undo the Muslim ban executive orders. That's critical and without question a key priority for our community. But there's still a lot of work in immigration to be done to allow Muslims to benefit from the immigration system in just the way that everybody else does. Layered over what is ostensibly a neutral immigration system. You have a terror watch list that includes more than 1 million names on it, and as far as we can tell, those are looks like essentially to an entry Muslims. And that 1 million, there's associations that everybody has. And it's not just being targeted by a watch list that makes it difficult to proceed through the immigration system. It could be your association with someone that's targeted by the watch list. It could be, you're part of a WhatsApp group, someone that was on a watch list, or you emailed someone on a watch list, or maybe you went to Hajj in the same travel party as someone on a watch list. Those kind of by chance encounters can really spell doom for folks in the immigration system, even without a Muslim ban in place.
Definitely. And I'm going to ask you a few more questions about that in a minute. I want to point out that is why it's so important that we have legislation like the No Ban Act, which right now is essentially, it's a marker bill. It's something that we can point to how we can fix the system under the right political circumstances, where we can get a bill like this that takes all these types of discriminations into account and the legal precedences that were previously established by the Muslim ban, and that we can repeal them and we can put into law that, for something like that to happen in the future, to ban access to the United States by an entire nation, there's going to be a lot of legal and procedural steps you would have to go to, and it would have to be for a very good reason. Not to impede upon the power of the president, but also to rightfully restrict it so that we don't have outrageous examples of discrimination like this just find their way into the system. And so that's the power of legislation, and that's the power of precedents that, can be overridden by presidents. Overridden by Congress, and hopefully a willing president. Jumping into it, if there wasn't a Muslim ban today, you said it earlier, there is really an unequal playing field. I remember one of the biggest excuses of the Trump administration for the Muslim ban is that the Obama administration had actually put forward a list of several countries where if you are a Muslim and you are a dual passport holder, like let's say from a European country and from Sudan, you cannot actually get reciprocal visa waivers for your EU passport because you were originally from Sudan. So there is a whole layer of discriminatory architecture out there in the immigration system. Could you unpeel that a little bit for us and kind of just for 5 minutes dive into what if tomorrow there was no Muslim ban? What are the other hurdles and challenges that we're looking forward to fighting?
Yeah, one of the primary challenges that Muslims face, in navigating the immigration system, is that there's, especially when it comes to the visa side of things, those consular officers really have
They're kings.
boundless discretion to do as they please with regards to any particular visa application. So, catch somebody on the wrong day, your visa application could be denied. And because they have such discretion, in areas where individuals are exercising, they can do whatever they want, and there's really no way to hold them accountable under the law or hold them to a particular standard. What ends up happening is, those folks end up reflecting the anti-Muslim sentiment that's percolating in society in general. And so, these consular officers are people too. They watch the news, they listen to what's going on, and they reflect it in their decision making. And so, in addition to some of, the Obama era decisions to um, uh, uh, attach disabilities in the immigration context to people of particular, national origins, it was just always the case that, if you're from Iran, if you're from Iraq, if you're from Syria, if you've traveled to Turkey, that, you're very likely your immigration application was going to be delayed and perhaps treated unfairly. And there really is. There's a whole, there's a controlled application review process called CARP, where USCIS, the agency that receives immigration applications from the public, takes a look at your immigration application, runs it against a database, and if you match, if you're on a watch list, perhaps if your associates or your family is on a watch list, then sends it to the FBI, where Allah knows what happens to it. Because we don't. Those structural elements of the immigration system, combined with what is an institutionalized form of absolute discretion that is given to consular officials, essentially guarantee that even without the Muslim ban, that Muslims will continue to face discrimination as they navigate the immigration system. And just remember, we're in the midst of a global pandemic. Alhamdulillah, the Muslim community worldwide has given to the United States a really large number of medical workers, from doctors and nurses, to other healthcare workers, all of a sudden, if you're an immigrant, looking to immigrate to a different country, the Muslim ban makes us a lot less attractive. It signals to the rest of the world an animosity towards Muslims that is, permanent, that is enshrined in the law, and that's bad for our community. That's bad for everybody.
Thank you. That's the real big picture of what the architecture is, which also makes it so important that whenever there's an election, whether that's at the state level or congressional or even up to president, that we are looking at candidates and seeing what type of culture they're bringing with them, because that affects the vetting process. I'm always concerned when we talk with CBP and they say working with state, what type of metrics they're drawing. They're running off algorithms. They have a whole computer system where they can check off different boxes for which city recently had an attack somewhere, or if there's political strife. There's all sorts of things that go into this like matrix algorithm that we don't know exactly how they're flagging people. And they say it's not discriminatory, but we also know that it can be just the fact that they flagged an entire nation, and quite often those nations are just Muslim. And so, it's a metric. It's not religious discrimination, they say, but it's tantamount to it. There's a box that can qualify for everything. With that big picture, what are you looking forward to in challenging the Muslim ban right now? We've had several lawsuits. We've kind of hit, I wouldn't say a legal dead end, but how can we move forward in challenging the Muslim ban? I'm looking at advocacy. I'm looking at lobbying. I'm looking at building political power in the community.
Yeah, all of those things are important and critical. That all tools at our disposal are used in furtherance of this important goal of undoing the Muslim ban. Just later today, we'll be filing a motion in the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in Richmond, asking for the entire Fourth Circuit to weigh in on the constitutionality of the existing Muslim ban. It was last year, a lower court in Maryland, a federal court, Judge Chuang, who said that even with the Supreme Court's decision in Trump v. Hawaii, that set a very, very high standard. It didn't eliminate the possibility of an adjudication of the Muslim ban in its entirety. It created a very, very demanding standard for litigants to meet in order to challenge the Muslim ban. Well, Judge Chuang looked at it and said, we can just take Trump at his word. He said we didn't just, let's remember, we didn't come up with the term Muslim ban.
Sure.
Trump invented the term Muslim ban.
His own branding, special branding.
It was his own. It was his words, not ours, that labeled the effort as such. And Judge Huang looked at that and said, "Well, I still see it as an act of discrimination." And so he said, "I want to learn more," and gave us subpoena power and the authority to request documents from the government. Unfortunately, a higher court intervenes. A couple Trump appointees in the Fourth Circuit, unfortunately, were assigned to the case, and that was a really bad draw for us in the Fourth Circuit, and put a stop to that effort, which is why it's so important that we don't rely on the courts, to do the right thing, because the courts often don't do the right thing. Congress often, doesn't do the right thing.
Yeah.
So you don't want to put, as a community, we can't put all of our eggs in a single basket. We have to continue to advocate publicly to garner public support, for opposition to the Muslim ban. We have to litigate in the courts until, that is completely exhausted. And
the litigation itself is a form of advocacy too, because you're keeping the issue alive.
Yeah, litigation is a way of convening folks together on a project. The case that we're working on, that there will be a filing on later today, encompasses, a large cross-section of civil rights groups in the United States, in addition to ourselves, the Brennan Center of Justice at the NYU School of Law, the ACLU, the National Immigration Law Center, Muslim Advocates, Americans United for Separation of Church and State, some of the top law firms in the country, in addition to others, are working together on this case. And so it is important, to not rely on any one thing and to use everything that is available at our disposal.
That is a lot of legal power. That's a lot of advocacy power. I really don't like making guarantees in DC. It's one of the worst things you can do. But I do guarantee you, relatively soon in our lifetimes, not our kids, we're going to bring an end to some of these most discriminatory institutions. I think the Muslim ban is going to be one of the first ones of all, inshallah. So with that, I want to thank everyone for joining our program today. Come back to us next Tuesday at 3 o'clock. We'll be streaming another good issue for y'all. All right.
Assalamu alaikum.